The Solana network manages a ledger of transactions, and those transactions are stored and become official thanks to the blocks that get produced, especially once those blocks become confirmed. They become confirmed once the network has achieved consensus. And so the way that we achieve consensus is that the individual validators cast their votes into this ballot box here, and the votes are going to determine whether a block is confirmed or not. We're trying to obtain a supermajority, so we want 2/3 of the total network, and that is by stake, to confirm that a block is good. And at that point, yeah, we say the block is confirmed and those transactions are officially on the blockchain. Unfortunately, this voting process for validators does come at a cost, which makes sense because these votes are network transactions, and transactions on the network require that cost. So the cost that we're looking at here on a per vote basis is about 5,000 LAM ports. That's typically what we're looking at here. And when we run the translation from LAM port to SOL, we see that it costs about 0.000005 SOL, which doesn't seem like a whole lot. However, keep in mind that the Solana network is producing about 2.5 blocks per second, because blocks are produced every 400 milliseconds on the average. And so that actually ends up amounting to quite a bit. In fact, we're looking at about 2 to 2.5 SOL per epoch of total cost here. And if we average out what an epoch is, epochs usually are about 2 to 2.5 days. And so we can average this out and say, yeah, it's about a SOL per day of total cost for a validator to be online and voting. And at today's prices for SOL, this can be very, very expensive. In fact, this is one of the primary operating expenses that keep interested parties from creating a validator and participating on the Solana network. Now, if all the validators shut down because it's too expensive, then the entire network fails. And so what we want to do is we want to create rewards for validators who successfully vote. When we have vote success, we're going to see rewards in the form of credits. We're not directly rewarding with SOL, the cryptocurrency on the Solana network. Instead, we're delivering a new mechanism here, the concept of the credits, as a means of rewarding them with something in the middle of the epoch. Now, importantly, if the validator goes offline or otherwise is voting on the wrong blocks, at that point they're not going to get any credits. So if these credits aren't SOL, then what exactly is the incentive? Well, eventually the credits are going to be exchanged for SOL. At the epoch boundary, the network allows the validators to convert the credits into SOL. And so this is ultimately the reward that the validators are achieving or receiving by participating in the Solana network. This SOL specifically is generated by the network. Some blockchains don't actually generate new coins. They either have to be mined, like with Bitcoin, or there's other mechanisms. However, in the Solana network, this specific reward system is known as inflationary SOL. And it's an intentional part of the network. It comes back to the proof of stake concept, where if I'm a staker and I have a bunch of stake here that's on a validator, I want to see this increasing over the course of time, and that is that APY, that annual percentage yield, that we'd expect to see, maybe something around 7%. So if I put 100 SOL and I stake that on this validator, then at the end of the year, I would hope to have 107 SOL, because it would have gone up by 7%. Well, where does that 7 SOL come from? It comes from the inflationary SOL. But we just said that the SOL is actually a reward system based on the credits that are earned for voting. So doesn't the validator actually get that inflationary SOL? And the answer is yes. The validator actually receives that SOL and has to decide how much to turn around and give to the stakers. So if we have, for example, our validator here, and we get some amount of SOL in exchange for the credits, and we have our stakers over here, well, now this validator has to decide how much to pass along. Is it 100%? Because if so, the validator doesn't keep any of the rewards. And so that could be a problem, especially given the cost of operations. So this is where we talked about the concept of validator commission. And so this validator might decide to keep, let's say, 4% of the rewards for itself, at which point it would pass 96% of the rewards onto the stakers. So the concept of commission is going to reduce the APY of the Solana stakers, but not by that much. If we're talking about 4% of the 7%, then we're still talking about getting about 6.8% rather than the 7 that was maybe expected. And so it's not very noticeable by the stakers still getting 96% of the inflationary SOL, and yet it does allow the validator to offset the costs of operation. Now, overall, the concept of voting in consensus contributes to the overall security of the blockchain network. Blockchains are built to be secure when most of the nodes are honest. But keep in mind that not all of the nodes are going to be honest. There are validators, even in today's Solana network, that are built by operators who are trying to do things that the network isn't really super happy with. And so we might consider those to be dishonest validators who are just in it for their own gain rather than the overall good of the network. And so the security boils down to a few different thresholds here. As long as we have no more than a third of the validators as being dishonest, if we said a third of the validators are dishonest, well, at this point they could do a little bit of damage. Because we need the supermajority to vote for consensus, they could actually stop consensus on the network, at which point this would halt it. So as long as we don't have 1/3 of all of the validators being dishonest, which is a pretty high threshold, we're still in we're in very good shape. But even at that point, the network could take measures to kick some of those validators off the network. At that point, they've done a little bit of damage, but they haven't actually changed anything on the network. They have simply halted it. Well, this is where the next threshold comes into play. If we have 2/3 of the validators are dishonest and on some level working together in all of this, well, at this point, they would have the supermajority, and it would give them a whole lot more power over what's happening on the network. Now, fortunately, in the Solana network, we don't need to worry about those thresholds because we're well below those as best anybody has any awareness, because some dishonest validators do a good job of disguising themselves. But overall, the network security is improved as we get more validators on the network, because we are a decentralized network, and the more decentralized that we are, the more secure our network is. And so that is one of the values of Solana, is protecting our transactions. We want to make sure that we are rewarding our validators for honest participation in the network, and overall everybody wins when the network is operating at peak efficiency. So, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and always remember to stake at the lake.